Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Well, it's reached crisis proportions down on the southern border. 100,000 migrants detained on the southern border in March alone, and many of them released into U.S. because our system can't accommodate them. And now President Trump says he's not playing around. He says, I may well close down the Mexican border to stop the flood of migrants. And in the meantime, he's cut off aid to 3 Central American countries, which he says are fomenting the flood of illegal immigrants. Chuck Colton is there. It's an exclusive interview from El Paso, Texas.
As border crossings break records and migrants pour onto American streets, President Trump is going to the source. Saturday, the State Department announced aid cuts to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala.
We were paying them tremendous amounts of money, and we're not paying them anymore because they haven't done a thing for us.
The Border Patrol predicts that numbers of illegal crossers into the U.S. will hit as many as 100,000 in March alone, and many of them are families. Up above on the bridge, dozens of families wait in line for up to 2 weeks to come in legally. But these migrants have jumped the line by entering illegally between the ports of entry. Now that they're on American soil, they must be given a court date. And with a system already crushed under the weight of more than 1 million asylum seekers, these Central American families know they'll be allowed to live in the United States for up to 3 years before they get their day in court. So right now there are thousands of migrants that have been captured over the last couple days being held in this detention facility underneath the bridge to Juarez. But you have to understand, this is not the normal detention process. It's not the normal facility that they're kept in. The problem is, Border Patrol has been picking up over 4,000 people a day for the last couple of days, and that's far beyond their capacity to take care of people. It's gotten so bad that the Border Patrol is saying they're going to have to just let these people go. No one really knows how many illegals enter the U.S. without being caught. Here in New Mexico, 100 miles west of El Paso, the human tidal wave has left the Border Patrol unable to cover this remote stretch of desert where these ranchers live.
My name's Russell Johnson. I'm a 4th generation out here to be ranching with my family. And this is the barrier that we've got in one stretch of the area that my family farms. And as you can see, it serves no purpose to stop vehicles or people. It's been cut multiple times. You can step right over it. I mean, it does nothing to stop illegal traffic from coming through. It's not even a deterrent.
I'm currently in northern Mexico, right on the U.S. southern border. And I'm going to cross into the United States right now. And I want to show you just how quickly I can do this. Just how quick can I get over the border. Here I am, and I'm in the United States, just like that.
Our sheriff's department is spread thin as it is, and so we rely heavily on Border Patrol for our only form of law enforcement out here. And so with this influx of people drawing down the manpower within the Border Patrol, we're basically left lawless out here.
From El Paso, Texas, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
We are left lawless out here. Isn't that a shocking thing? And yet the Democrats in Congress are playing political games with this thing. I don't know if they want a whole bunch of illiterate immigrants to be on the rolls who they think will vote Democratic. I don't know what it is. But this is a crisis, and no nation can survive to open its borders. There are hundreds of millions of people in South and Central America who would like to live in the United States, to get our health care, to get our education, to get the wonderful jobs we have. Well, we just don't have that many of them to go around. You know, we want to help other people. We want to be compassionate. We give a lot of money to other nations, but we cannot, and no nation cannot allow a flood of immigrants from other countries to come in and use their facilities the way ours are doing. And Congress refuses to act. And yet the president is doing what he can. Well, anyhow, if you want to write your congressman, this is what you ought to write him about. We have a crisis in our border, and it's going to destroy our nation unless we do something about it. Now, the leader of the many, many people of the Democrat Party running for president, The leader in that race is Joe Biden. He's a former vice president. Well, let's take a look at what he's doing.
Well, Pat, Biden says he doesn't believe he's ever acted inappropriately, but the potential Democratic presidential fundraiser is under fire from his own party. Dale Hurd has a story.
The allegations about Joe Biden's conduct are not new, but in the age of the Me Too movement, fresh accusations from a fellow Democrat could hurt his potential run for president. Nevada Democrat Lucy Flores wrote that the former vice president inappropriately touched and kissed her head before a rally in 2014.
I feel Joe Biden put his hands on my shoulders, get up very close to me from behind, lean in, smell my hair, and then plant a slow kiss on the top of my head. It's been dismissed as if it's just Biden be Biden. Boys will be boys, no big deal. It is a big deal.
Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway agrees.
All of these post-Me Too allegations and insinuations really don't comport with probably Joe Biden's conduct over the years. If anybody just types in creepy Uncle Joe videos, you come up with a treasure trove.
Biden's response? He doesn't think he did anything wrong, but he's willing to listen. Biden said, in my many years on the campaign trail and in public life, I've offered countless handshakes, hugs, expressions of affection, support, and comfort. And not once, never did I believe I acted inappropriately. If it is suggested I did so, I will listen respectfully, but it was never my intention. But Democratic presidential candidates agree it's a problem.
I believe Lucy Flores, and Joe Biden needs to give an answer.
Bernie Sanders was asked if this disqualifies Biden from running for president.
I'm not sure that one incident alone disqualifies anybody, but her point is absolutely right.
Polls show Biden is the clear frontrunner for the Democratic nomination, even before he is officially announced. But the frontrunner is now under attack from his own party. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Pat?
Joe Biden is he's really a nice guy, and everybody really likes him. And the thing is, he is sort of a Mr. Everyman. He's he's a worker's friend, and he would appeal to a broad swath of the American people. But he is, like it or not, he's an old white guy. And old white guys aren't really the kind of people the Democrats are looking for these days. They are looking for somebody more like Beto, and Beto has got his own problems. So it will be, as one Democrat consultant said, interestingly enough, when your opponent is sinking, throw him an anchor. And I think they're in trouble, and I think all President Trump has got to do is sit by and watch them sink. John?
Well, Pat, federal spending over the past 5 months of fiscal 2019 is the highest it's been in 10 years, reaching $1.8 trillion. The last time the government spent more was 2009, when it hit $1.9 trillion, including a $700 billion bank bailout signed by President George W. Bush and a $787 billion stimulus package from President Barack Obama, at the time two of the biggest emergency spending bills in history. The first 5 months of fiscal 2019 also saw the lowest tax receipts in the past 4 years. Well, turning overseas, where Turkish President Recep Erdogan's political party took a blow in Sunday's elections. Candidates of the main opposition party are set to take control in Ankara, the capital, as well as several other major cities in mayoral races throughout the country. In Ankara, the opposition candidate is leading by about 3 points. In Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, the vote is too close to call. The elections are seen as a test of Erdogan's popularity as the country's economy struggles. Overall, his party won 40 out of 81 provincial races. Pat, that is down from 53 in 2014.
Well, if I can say so, Erdogan is a bad guy. He's an extreme Muslim. He is a dictator in way of acting and the way he thinks. And he's a tremendous danger to Israel. Well, it's amazing that he's getting some problems. But if you read the Bible, You got this thing about Gog and Magog. Most of that is Turkey. And the churches of Asia, they're all in Turkey. Turkey has played a key role in the Old and New Testament. And I think the forecast in Ezekiel 38 is for Turkey to be leading the coalition against Israel in the latter days. So when Erdogan was in power, I thought that maybe this is biblical prophecy being fulfilled. But nevertheless, if he weakens, I don't think anybody should shed too many tears over it. John?
Pat, speaking of the Bible, Israeli archaeologists have made 2 rare discoveries in and around the city of David, pointing to historical figures mentioned in the Bible. Chris Mitchell shows us what makes these new finds so special.
The discoveries came from here, the Givati excavation. It's part of the ancient city of David, where King David set up his capital 3,000 years ago. Israeli archaeologists made the discoveries in this structure, where they found evidence of a big fire they believe dates back to 586 BC, when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem. Here you can still see the ash from the fire. The discoveries are an ancient bulla and a seal.
This is the bulla. A bulla is actually a tiny piece of clay that was attached to letters or jars in order to make sure that no one opened them without noticing.
The bulla bore a special name.
And this one says, Tu Natan Melech, the servant of the king. Le Natan Melech, Eved HaMelech. Now, the name Natan Melech is known from the Bible, from the book of Kings.
While archaeologists can't say for certain this Natan Melech is the one mentioned in the Bible, Dr. Gerbevich from Hebrew University says the evidence is compelling.
First, the name Natan Melech, which is rare. Second, the period. We're talking about the mid-7th century BCE, King Josiah. And third, the fact that we have the title. So Natan Melech was someone who was close to the king.
For the archaeologists, the finds are like touching Jerusalem's history.
This is very impressive for me, not only because of the history, because this is actually a snapshot for the history that happened here 2,600 years ago.
These discoveries shed more light on ancient Jerusalem and paint a more complete picture of King David's city. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Givati excavation, the city of David.
Thanks, Chris. Well, here at home, the spring snap is over, with cold weather settling over the East Coast today. Temperatures plunging back into the 30s and even the 20s in some places. A coastal storm threatening to bring high winds and rain in the south and northeast by midweek. This after a weekend of wild weather in the Midwest. In Colorado, a tornado tossed these RVs around like toys. The same storm system brought enough hail to tie up traffic, and a snowstorm hitting Denver caused whiteout conditions. Meanwhile, more than 1 million acres of farmland are either underwater or saturated by flooding from spring rains and snowmelt, with more expected in the days ahead. But here in Washington, D.C., Mother Nature showing off her beauty as the cherry blossoms hit their peak. And Pat, that annual festival brings in about 1.5 million tourists each year.
Well, it's the Japanese gave us some of those cherry blossoms, and they've got a feature of Washington. It's a lovely thing along the tidal basin to see those cherry blossoms, so that's good. But the guys in Nebraska don't think that's so splendid. This means that the growing season for thousands of farmers will be over. They can't plant crops. They can't get out in the fields. And these floods in Nebraska have been devastating. That state is in a chaotic condition because of this flooding, and I'm sure the federal government is going to give something to help, but nevertheless, it's a tragedy. These wonderful people have been just inundated because the levees have all breached, and the amount of flood water is extraordinary. The rivers are overflowing, and I'm still looking. I hate to be looking for something bad, but the snow pack up in the Sierra Nevadas has been in terms of many, many feet. It's not a question of inches. It's how many feet, and it's 10, 20 or more feet. And when that begins to melt, I think some of the rivers like the Whittier Dam and other places like that are going to be in serious trouble in California. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Terry?
Well, all the agricultural loss from that's going to hit everybody.
Oh, it's absolutely. The prices of food, grain, and everything will go up. But I don't think that Nebraska is necessarily that important. But in terms of the overall economy. But I think when you start talking about Illinois, you start talking about Missouri, you start talking about
the picture of the whole.
it's the whole Midwest. It's a terrible thing.